The marble floor gleamed cold beneath her knees. Emma Shaw felt it through the thin fabric of her dress as she scrubbed in wide, practiced arcs. The soapy water had long since turned gray, reflecting her exhausted face in its murky surface. Her arms ached, her back burned, but none of that compared to the sudden heat that flared deep within her core. Emma froze, brush suspended over the wet stone. Not now, please not now. The first wave passed, leaving her trembling. She knew the signs, the telltale warmth spreading through her veins, the heightened sensitivity of her skin, the way her heart suddenly raced. Her heat was coming days earlier than expected. You missed a spot. The cold voice sliced through the quiet. Emma flinched, though she'd learned years ago not to show weakness before Catherine Reed. Her stepmother stood in the doorway of the grand hall, elegant in midnight blue silk that whispered against the marble as she approached. She smelled of expensive perfume and privilege. Emma smelled of soap and submission. Yes, ma'am, Emma whispered, plunging the brush back into the bucket. Catherine circled her stiletto heels, clicking like a predator's claws. Then she stopped, her nostrils flaring slightly. Her eyes narrowed to ice blue slits. You're beginning to give off a scent, she said, voice dripping with disgust. Our guests arrive in an hour. Make yourself scarce in the cellar quarters. The last thing we need is for you to distract the alphas with your condition. Emma kept her eyes lowered. Yes, ma'am. Catherine bent down, her perfect face inches from Emma's. Remember your place. An Omega like you will never be worthy of an Alpha's attention, not after what you did. The accusation hung in the air, unspoken, but ever present. The shadow that had followed Emma for 8 years since that night at the ancient temple when her mother had fallen, or been pushed, as Catherine never failed to imply. You may be living under my roof, Catherine continued, but never forget that it's my charity alone that keeps you from the streets where trash belongs. Emma nodded silently, fighting the sudden urge to look directly into Catherine's eyes. Sometimes when emotions ran high, her eyes changed. Her mother had warned her never to let anyone see, not if she wanted to survive. Catherine straightened, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her dress. When you finish here, help the kitchen staff. Then disappear before 6. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Only when Catherine's footsteps faded did Emma allow herself a single shuddering breath. Her fingers instinctively found the thin silver chain hidden beneath her collar. The pendant remained cool against her heated skin, a small crescent moon encircling what looked like a star, or perhaps a stylized eye. The last gift from her mother. Emma closed her eyes, letting memory wash over her. Her mother, Eleanor Shaw, with hair the same rich brown as Emma's eyes. The same unusual blue-green that sometimes shifted to silver in certain light. Eleanor kneeling beside 8-year-old Emma under the full moon, their secret place in the ancient temple deep in the woods behind what was now Catherine's estate. Listen carefully, my darling, Eleanor had whispered. Our bloodline is special, sacred. We carry the light of the moon in our veins. Like werewolves in stories, young Emma had asked, eyes wide. Her mother had smiled, but there was sadness in it. More special than that. Long ago, the first Luna Queen united all wolf packs under peace and prosperity. She was chosen by the moon itself, marked by its light. Is that what this is? Emma had touched the pendant her mother fastened around her neck. This is our legacy. Keep it hidden, safe. Someday when the blood moon rises, this will guide you to your destiny. Eleanor had cupped Emma's face. But remember, there are those who fear our bloodline, who have hunted us for generations. A week later, Eleanor was dead. A tragic accident, they said. A slip from the ravine near the temple ruins. And Emma, found unconscious nearby, became the orphan taken in by her mother's generous friend, Catherine Reed, a woman who quickly revealed her true nature once the public sympathy had faded. Emma returned to the present, blinking away tears. The pendant seemed to pulse once against her skin, as if responding to her thoughts. Another wave of heat coursed through her, stronger this time. She hurried to finish the floor. Her heat was definitely coming early, and she needed to be safely locked away before the Alpha guests arrived. Catherine was hosting a dinner for several prominent pack leaders from across the Pacific Northwest. The last time Emma had accidentally encountered an Alpha during her heat cycle, the consequences had been severe. The man had followed her scent to the kitchen, cornered her against the pantry door. If not for the head cook intervening, Emma didn't like to think what might have happened. Catherine had punished her regardless, 3 days without food for tempting an honored guest. Emma emptied her bucket in the service sink and stored her cleaning supplies. As she passed the grand staircase, hushed, excited voices drifted down from above. Vanessa Reed, Catherine's daughter, 2 years older than Emma, was talking to her personal maid. The gold dress or the silver, it must be perfect. Mother says the Alpha King himself may attend the Blood Moon Ball next week. Emma paused 1 foot on the service stairs. The silver would complement your eyes, miss, the maid replied. Though they say Dominic Blackwood favors bold colors. Dominic? Vanessa savored the name like expensive chocolate. Mother says he's searching for a mate. Can you imagine, after all her preparation, I could become Luna Queen of all North American packs? Emma continued down to the kitchens, their conversation fading behind her. The Blood Moon Ball. Every 7 years when the moon turned crimson for 3 consecutive nights, the most powerful alpha families gathered to forge alliances, settle disputes, and occasionally find mates. It was the social event of the decade in their world. A world Emma existed within, but never truly belonged to, despite her wolf nature. As an Omega without pack or status, she was less than nothing in their hierarchy. A servant, invisible. The kitchen buzzed with activity. Cook barked orders at scurrying staff, while delicious aromas filled the air. Emma's enhanced senses growing sharper as her heat approached made everything overwhelming. The smells, the sounds, the heat from the ovens. Emma, Marcus, one of the few friendly faces in the household, waved her over. At 50, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, he'd been the estate's groundskeeper since before Emma arrived. He had always treated her with a gentle respect that others rarely showed. You look flushed, he noted quietly, handing her a glass of cold water. Is it? She nodded, grateful for his discretion. Early, I need to get to the cellar quarters after I help here. Marcus frowned. Be careful. Lady Catherine has the West Wing parlor set for her meeting. Take the back passage. Meeting? I thought she was hosting dinner. Different guests first. Men I've never seen before. They arrived an hour ago in unmarked cars. Something's off about them. Before Emma could question further, Cook called her to help plate appetizers. The work required concentration, a welcome distraction from the growing discomfort in her body. She arranged delicate pastries filled with wild mushrooms and herbs, careful not to let her trembling hands disrupt their presentation. As she finished, raised voices echoed from somewhere above, unusual in a household where Catherine demanded perfect decorum. Emma exchanged glances with Marcus. Go, he mouthed. I'll finish here. Emma nodded gratefully and slipped toward the back stairs. But curiosity pulled her toward the sound. The voices came from the West Wing parlor door, slightly ajar. Emma pressed herself against the wall, hidden in the shadow of a large decorative urn. We can't wait any longer, a man's voice insisted. The blood moon approaches. If the signs appear as the prophecy states, lower your voice, Richard. Catherine's tone carried the sharp edge Emma knew well. The staff has ears. This house has ears. Your concerns for discretion are noted, the man Richard continued more quietly. But the council grows impatient. We've hunted the Moonborn bloodline for generations. Eleanor Shaw was believed to be the last adult carrier. Your arrangement was meant to ensure her daughter never learned of her heritage. Emma's heart hammered so loudly she feared they might hear it. They were talking about her mother. About her. I've kept my end of the bargain, Catherine hissed. The girl knows nothing, believes her mother's death was an accident, works as a servant in my home where I can monitor her every move. Yet you've allowed her to live to adulthood, another male voice interjected. A dangerous choice. Killing her would have raised questions. This way she remains hidden in plain sight, powerless, ignorant of her potential. And if she shows signs during the blood moon, the second man pressed, if the mark appears, a tense silence followed. Then I will do what is necessary, Catherine finally answered, voice cold as stone. Emma backed away, heart thundering in her chest. Whatever they were discussing, whatever connection it had to her mother, Catherine was involved in something sinister. Something that threatened Emma's life. She retreated to the kitchen, mind reeling. Marcus took one look at her pale face and pulled her into the pantry. What happened? He whispered. I need to leave. Emma's voice shook. Tonight, Catherine, these men, they're talking about my mother, about something called Moonborn bloodline. They'll kill me when... Another wave of heat crashed through her, stronger than before. Emma gasped, clutching the edge of a shelf for support. You can't go anywhere in this condition, Marcus said firmly. The cellar quarters are safest for now. I'll bring you supplies. We'll figure something out tomorrow when your mind is clearer. Emma wanted to argue but knew he was right. In the early stages of heat, an unmated Omega was vulnerable, physically weakened, while simultaneously broadcasting a scent that attracted alphas for miles. Trying to escape now would be suicide. She allowed Marcus to guide her through the back passages to the cellar quarters, a small windowless room where Catherine insisted she stay during heat cycles. The isolation was both punishment and practicality. "Lock the door," Marcus advised, handing her a bag containing water, some bread, and a small jar of suppressant salve that would help manage the symptoms. "I'll check on you tomorrow morning." Once alone, Emma sank onto the narrow cot. The pendant seemed to burn against her skin now. Moonborn bloodline. The mark. Her mother's warnings about those who feared their kind. It was all connected somehow. She removed the necklace, studying it in the dim light. The crescent moon symbol cradling what she now realized wasn't a star, but an eye. As she traced its outline, memories surfaced, her mother teaching her to feel the moonlight to draw strength from it. Strange lessons she'd half forgotten in the years since dismissed as childish games. Emma closed her eyes, focusing on breathing through another wave of heat. 3 days. She would be confined here for 3 days while her body went through this biological torment. And then what returned to servitude, knowing Catherine and her mysterious associates might be planning her death. Sleep came fitfully disturbed by fever dreams. Her mother standing beneath a crimson moon, a massive black wolf with golden eyes. Blood on stone, a silver light emanating from her own skin. She awoke to gentle knocking. Disoriented, Emma checked her watch. Nearly noon of the next day. She'd slept longer than expected. The worst of the first heat wave passed. "Emma," a female voice whispered through the door. "It's Sarah." Emma unlocked the door to find not just Sarah, but Lily as well, two of the younger housemaids who had always been kind to her. "We brought you food," Sarah said, offering a cloth-covered tray. "And news. The whole house is talking about the Blood Moon Ball," Lily added, slipping inside and closing the door. "Lady Catherine received the royal invitation yesterday. The Alpha King himself will be attending." "Dominic Blackwood," Sarah confirmed, eyes wide with excitement. "They say he's the most powerful alpha in generations, 38 years old and still unmated." Emma accepted the tray gratefully, though gossip about alphas was the last thing on her mind. "Thank you for the food, but I need to ask you something more important. Have either of you heard of something called the Moonborn bloodline?" The two maids exchanged puzzled glances and shook their heads. "What about my mother? Did either of you work here when Eleanor Shaw was alive?" "I was just a child then," Sarah said. "But my mother worked in the laundry. She always spoke well of your mother, said she was kind to everyone regardless of status." "Unlike some," Lily muttered, clearly referring to Catherine. "Did she ever mention anything strange about my mother being different somehow?" Sarah hesitated. "There were rumors, nothing specific, just that she was special in some way, had abilities others didn't." Emma touched her pendant. "Like what?" "Healing, some said. Others claimed she could calm even the most aggressive alphas with just a look. But these were just stories." Sarah shrugged. "Why are you asking now?" Emma debated how much to share. These girls had been kind, but she had no idea where their loyalties truly lay. "Just curious, being locked down here makes me think of the past." "Speaking of locked down," Lily interjected, "when does your heat end? The entire household staff is working overtime preparing for the ball. Cook is in a state about the menu, and Marcus is transforming the garden pavilion with lights and flowers." "Another day, maybe 2, Emma estimated, though this one came early and seems milder than usual. "Well, when you're better, come find us," Sarah said. "Vanessa's ordered 7 new gowns just for the 3 nights of the ball. The fittings are chaos." After they left, Emma picked at the food mind spinning. The Blood Moon Ball would bring every powerful alpha in the region to Catherine's estate, including this unmated king. And somehow this coincided with whatever Catherine and those men feared about Emma's potential during the blood moon. She needed to know more about her mother, about this moonborn bloodline, about the mysterious mark they mentioned. Knowledge was her only defense against whatever Catherine planned. When evening came, Emma felt strong enough to risk leaving her room. The heat symptoms had subsided to manageable levels, unusual as typically her cycles lasted 3 full days. She applied more suppressant salve and dressed in clean clothes that Sarah had brought. With any luck, she could slip outside to the temple ruins where her mother had taken her as a child. Something there might provide answers. The household was quiet. Most staff retired after the evening meal. Emma took the servants' passages to avoid any lingering guests. At the kitchen garden door, she paused, listening. Nothing but the chirp of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. She stepped into the cool night air, relief washing over her at the sensation of freedom after confinement. The moon hung nearly full in the sky, not yet the blood moon, but swelling toward it. Emma felt its light on her skin like a caress. The path to the temple ruins wasn't maintained, but Emma's feet remembered the way. into the woods behind the estate following the small stream until it widened, then up the rocky incline to where the ancient stones stood in their broken circle. Local legends claim the temple predated European settlement, built by native peoples who worshipped the moon and its powers. Emma's mother had told a different story, that it was constructed by the first Luna Queen as a place where all wolves, regardless of rank or pack, could seek the moon's blessing. The ruins felt different in darkness, more alive somehow. Moonlight spilled through gaps in the trees, illuminating the moss-covered stones. At the center stood a crumbling altar where Emma had spent countless hours with her mother learning strange lessons she hadn't understood then. She approached it now, running her fingers over the worn carvings. Crescent moons, stars, wolves. And at the center, a symbol matching her pendant, the eye within the moon. "What were you trying to teach me, Mother?" she whispered. As if in answer, pain lanced through her right wrist. Emma gasped, clutching it to her chest. It burned as though branded by invisible fire. She forced herself to look, expecting to see injury, but her skin remained unmarked. Yet the sensation continued, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. A twig snapped in the forest behind her. Emma whirled, suddenly alert to the fact that she'd left the safety of the house while still carrying traces of heat scent. Foolish. If an alpha had caught her trail. The woods stood silent, but Emma sensed she was no longer alone. Her eyes scanned the darkness between trees. Nothing moved, yet the feeling of being watched intensified. Then she saw them. Eyes, golden as harvest moons gleaming from the shadows. The eyes of a wolf, larger than any natural wolf should be. Emma froze, instinct, warring between flight and submission. Either could trigger a predatory response in an alpha. The massive shape moved forward, moonlight gradually revealing black fur, powerful shoulders, a head that stood higher than Emma's waist. A werewolf, an alpha in wolf form, and not just any alpha judging by the sheer size. The wolf approached slowly, golden eyes never leaving hers. Emma's back pressed against the ancient altar stone, nowhere left to retreat. Her pendant seemed to pulse against her skin, in time with the burning sensation in her wrist. "Please," she whispered, though she knew reasoning with a wolf was useless. "I mean no harm." To her astonishment, the wolf stopped. Its head tilted slightly, a curiously human gesture of consideration. Then, more shocking still, it lowered itself to the ground, massive head bowing as though in submission. Emma blinked, certain she was misinterpreting. Alphas never submitted, especially not to an Omega. The wolf remained prostrate for several heartbeats before slowly raising its head. Those golden eyes studied her with an intelligence that seemed beyond animal. Then, with deliberate care, it backed away several steps before turning and vanishing into the forest. Emma released the breath she'd been holding, legs trembling so badly she had to sit on the cold ground. What had just happened defied everything she knew about werewolf dynamics. No alpha would show deference to an unmated packless Omega. Unless her fingers found the pendant again. Moonborn bloodline, her mother's lessons, the temple, the strange burning in her wrist that even now was fading. She needed answers, and she needed them before the blood moon rose. With newfound determination, Emma returned to the estate, mind churning with possibilities and questions. The following days passed in a blur of household preparations. With her heat cycle mysteriously shortened, Emma returned to her duties, though Catherine watched her with increased suspicion. The incident with the wolf remained secret, something Emma replayed in her mind during quiet moments, searching for meaning. 4 days before the ball, as Emma polished silver in the dining room, she overheard the staff gossiping. "They say the Alpha King travels with a personal guard of 12 elite warriors," one maid whispered. "I heard he can shift into a wolf larger than a bear," another added, "black as midnight with eyes like gold." Emma's hand stilled on the silver candlestick. "What else do you know about him?" she asked, trying to sound merely curious. The older maid looked surprised that Emma had joined the conversation, but answered, "They say he's the most powerful alpha born in centuries. Never taken a mate, though not for lack of offerings. Rumor has it he's waiting for someone special." "A true mate," the younger maid sighed romantically. "Imagine being the one he chooses." "What do you mean by true mate?" Emma pressed. "Soul bonded. Destined. The old stories say certain wolves are created as perfect pairs, their souls recognizing each other instantly." The older maid shrugged. "Fairy tales if you ask me, but they say the Alpha King believes in them." Emma finished her work quickly and sought out Marcus. She found him in the garden pavilion, supervising the hanging of crystal chandeliers for the ball. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly when he descended from his ladder. They walked to a secluded corner of the garden, away from curious ears. I'm going to the ball, Emma announced. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. That's impossible. Lady Catherine would never allow it. I'm not asking her permission. I need to be there, Marcus. The night of the blood moon, I think it's connected to my mother somehow, to whatever Catherine and those men were discussing. Marcus studied her face. You've remembered something. Not exactly, but I've been having dreams. And then there was the wolf. She told him about her encounter at the temple ruins, watching his expression shift from skepticism to wonder. An alpha submitted to you, he whispered. That's unheard of. I know. And I think it has to do with what Catherine called the Moonborn bloodline. My mother was protecting me from something or for something. The blood moon ball is my only chance to discover what. Marcus was silent for a long moment. You'll need a dress. What? If you're going to a royal ball, you need to look the part. He smiled slightly. I may know some people who can help, but Emma, it will be dangerous. Every powerful alpha in the region will be there, including Catherine's allies. I know, but I have to try. She touched the pendant beneath her dress. My mother died keeping secrets to protect me. I owe it to her to find out why. The night of the first blood moon arrived with a flurry of activity. Carriages and luxury cars lined the long driveway to the estate. Guests in formal attire streamed into the main house, while servers carried trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Music from a string quartet floated from the garden pavilion where the ball would begin once the moon rose. Emma watched from the small attic window of her quarters. Marcus had been true to his word. With help from Sarah Lilly and a few other sympathetic staff members, they had created a gown from leftover fabric from Vanessa's many dress fittings. It wasn't perfect seams, visible in places the beadwork sparse, but in the dim light of evening, it would pass for the work of a modest dressmaker. A soft knock at her door announced Sarah's arrival. It's time, the maid whispered. Catherine and Vanessa just left for the pavilion. The Alpha King's motorcade was spotted on the main road. Emma's heart pounded as Sarah helped her into the dress, pale blue silk that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair, usually pulled back severely for work, now fell in soft waves past her shoulders. You look beautiful, Sarah said, genuine admiration in her voice, like a princess from a story. Thank you, Emma replied, throat tight with emotion. For everything. Marcus is waiting by the east garden gate. The guards are distracted with the arriving guests. If you go now, you should make it unseen. With one last glance in the small mirror, Emma slipped from the servants' quarters. The corridors were mercifully empty as she made her way through the back passages of the estate. At the east garden door, Marcus waited as promised. His eyes widened as she approached. My God, he whispered, you look just like her, like Eleanor. Emma swallowed hard. Is that a compliment? The highest. He squeezed her hand. Your mother was the most beautiful, kindest soul I ever knew, and the bravest. His expression grew serious. Be careful tonight, Emma. Trust your instincts. And if anything feels wrong, find me immediately. With a deep breath, Emma stepped into the garden. Lanterns illuminated winding paths leading to the pavilion. The blood moon had begun to rise, casting everything in a subtle crimson glow. As she walked, her pendant warmed against her skin, and the strange sensation returned to her wrist, not painful this time, but a gentle pulsing. The sound of the string quartet grew louder. Laughter and conversation drifted through the evening air. Emma paused at the edge of the forest that bordered the pavilion clearing, suddenly overwhelmed by doubt. What was she doing? She didn't belong in that glittering world of alphas and power. If Catherine spotted her, something rustled in the trees behind her. Emma turned sharply, memories of the wolf at the temple flashing through her mind. But the presence she sensed was human. A man emerged from the shadows of the forest path. Tall, impossibly broad-shouldered, dressed in black formal wear that made him seem part of the darkness itself. The crimson moonlight caught the sharp angles of his face, strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes that gleamed like molten gold. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She knew without being told who he was. The Alpha King, Dominic Blackwood. And he was staring at her with an expression of pure, thunderstruck recognition. He approached slowly as if afraid she might disappear. Each step was deliberate, powerful. The very air seemed to change with his proximity, becoming charged electric. Emma found herself unable to move, transfixed by those golden eyes that somehow seemed familiar. He stopped mere feet away, his scent washing over her, pine smoke, something wild and untamed that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. Up close, she could see the subtle signs of his power, the way he held himself, the controlled strength in his movements, the intensity of his gaze. You, he said, voice deep and resonant, a single word that somehow contained 1,000 questions. Emma's pulse raced. The burning in her wrist intensified. Her pendant felt hot enough to scorch her skin. She should be terrified. This man was the most powerful alpha alive, a predator at the top of the supernatural hierarchy. Yet something deeper than fear flooded her veins. Recognition, as if her soul remembered something her mind had forgotten. "Do I know you?" she managed, voice barely above a whisper. He inhaled deeply, eyes briefly closing. "Jasmine," he murmured. "Wild jasmine and moonlight." Before she could respond, his eyes opened, golden gaze piercing through her defenses. "What's your name?" "Emma," she answered, surprising herself with her honesty. "Emma Shaw." Something flickered across his face, surprise recognition, she couldn't tell. He took another step closer. Too close. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Shaw," he repeated, "like Eleanor Shaw." Emma's heart nearly stopped. "She was my mother." Dominic's expression transformed intensity, replaced by something like wonder. Then the prophecies were true. After all this time, another wave of heat swept through Emma's body. Not her heat cycle, which had mysteriously abated, but something new. Something triggered by his proximity. She stepped back instinctively, suddenly aware of the danger in being alone with an alpha of his power. He noticed her retreat, a slight frown creasing his brow. "You don't need to fear me, Emma Shaw." "I'm not afraid," she lied. A smile touched his lips, knowing and predatory. "Your heartbeat says otherwise." "What do you want from me?" His gaze traveled over her face as if memorizing every feature. "A question I've been asking myself since I caught your scent 3 nights ago at the old temple." Emma's eyes widened. "The wolf, that was you." He inclined his head slightly. "I've been watching this estate for days, sensing something. Someone of importance. I never expected to find." He trailed off as voices approached along the garden path. Dominic's posture changed instantly, shifting from intense focus to alert guardedness. "You should go inside," he said, voice now formal. "The ball is beginning. I'll find you again." The way he said it, not a suggestion, but a certainty, sent a shiver down Emma's spine. Before she could respond, he had melted back into the shadows of the trees, leaving her alone on the path. Emma took a steadying breath, mind reeling. The Alpha King had been watching the estate, had encountered her at the temple in wolf form, knew her mother's name, spoke of prophecies. The pendant burned against her skin like a brand, its meaning suddenly terrifyingly clear. This was what her mother had been preparing her for, what Catherine and her mysterious associates feared. As the blood moon climbed higher in the crimson sky, Emma straightened her shoulders and turned toward the pavilion. Whatever destiny awaited her there, she would face it head on. For her mother, for herself, for the truth she had been denied for 8 long years. She stepped out of the shadows and into the light, unaware that every step took her closer to a revelation that would shake the foundations of her world forever. The pavilion rose before Emma like a temple of crystal and light. Massive chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, their thousands of facets capturing and multiplying the crimson glow that filtered through the glass walls. The blood moon's light painted everything in shades of ruby and garnet, turning the polished marble floors into pools of dark wine. Music from the string quartet floated through air heavy with expensive perfume, rare whiskey and the unmistakable musk of alpha power. Emma hesitated at the entrance, suddenly aware of how utterly out of place she was. The women glided across the floor in designer gowns worth more than she earned in years of service, their necks and wrists adorned with jewels that caught the light like predators' eyes. The men stood tall in tailored suits that emphasized broad shoulders and narrow waists, their alpha presence filling the space with an almost tangible energy. These were the elite of Werewolf Society pack leaders, old money bloodlines, those born into privilege, while she had scrubbed their floors. A server approached with a tray of champagne. Emma took a glass, grateful for something to occupy her hands, and moved to the periphery of the crowd. From this vantage point, she could observe without drawing attention. Catherine and Vanessa held court near the center of the room, surrounded by admirers. Vanessa sparkled in her silver gown that seemed spun from moonlight itself, her practiced laugh carrying across the space with calculated musicality. Emma's attention drifted to the raised dais at the far end of the pavilion. An ornate chair, more throne than seat, stood empty, waiting. For him, for Dominic Blackwood, the man whose wolf form had recognized something in her that she hadn't yet recognized in herself. As if summoned by her thoughts, a ripple of anticipation surged through the crowd. Conversations hushed mid-sentence. Heads turned with almost synchronized precision. The quartet's melody faltered before resuming with renewed vigor. The very air seemed to change, becoming charged with expectation. He entered from a side door flanked by two stone-faced men whose watchful eyes and coiled posture marked them as security. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a path without being asked or commanded. Dominic moved with the fluid confidence of an apex predator, unhurried yet unmistakably dangerous. His black tailored suit emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean power of his frame. In the crimson moonlight, his eyes gleamed that impossible gold wolf eyes in a human face ancient and knowing. Emma pressed deeper into the shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs. Their encounter in the garden had left her shaken, confused by the intensity of his focus, the way he looked at her as if she were something precious, long lost and finally found. The way he'd known her mother's name when even Emma herself had been denied knowledge of her own heritage. Dominic paused occasionally to acknowledge various guests with the barest nod or brief word, his expression a carefully crafted mask of polite interest. Yet Emma noticed his gaze constantly sweeping the room, searching for her. "I'd stay hidden if I were you," a soft voice murmured beside her. Emma startled, turning to find an elderly man with kind eyes and silver hair. His ceremonial robe bore ancient symbols she recognized from the temple ruins, marking him as a pack elder of considerable standing. "Why would I hide?" she asked, careful to keep her voice neutral. The old man smiled, the expression both wise and sad. "Because when a king hunts prey that wishes to survive, stays very still. Unless—" His gaze dropped briefly to her wrist where the mark had begun to pulse faintly beneath her skin. "Unless the prey is actually a queen." Before she could question him, he melted back into the crowd, leaving Emma with a chill racing down her spine. How had he known? What had he seen in her that prompted such a cryptic warning? Across the room, Dominic reached the dais and took his seat with casual authority. Immediately, Catherine approached, presenting Vanessa with the practiced grace of a woman who had planned this moment for years. Emma watched from her shadowed corner as Dominic acknowledged them with cool courtesy. His posture remained relaxed but distant, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. He looked bored. A king fulfilling an obligation rather than a man enjoying a celebration. Until his eyes found Emma's across the crowded room. The change was subtle but unmistakable. A straightening of his spine, a sharpening of focus. The predator spotting what it sought. Emma froze, unable to look away, as his golden gaze locked with hers, seeming to burn through the distance between them. The pendant at her throat throbbed against her skin, no longer cool but pulsing with heat that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. The strange tingling in her wrist intensified, not painful, but insistent, a shimmer of silver now visible beneath the delicate skin. Dominic rose from his seat, interrupting Catherine mid-sentence. The action was so unexpected, so contrary to protocol, that a ripple of whispers spread through the pavilion like wind through summer grass. Alpha Kings did not simply walk away from conversations with prominent lunas. Yet Dominic moved with singular purpose, his eyes never leaving Emma as he cut through the crowd that parted instinctively before him. Panic flooded her veins. She couldn't face him here, not surrounded by hundreds of werewolves who would instantly recognize her as the household servant, not with Catherine watching her cold eyes calculating every possibility. Emma slipped behind a marble column and through a side door that led to one of the garden terraces. The cool night air hit her like a blessing after the perfumed heat of the pavilion. Emma moved quickly along the stone balustrade, seeking deeper shadows away from the spill of light from the tall windows. The blood moon hung fully revealed now, enormous in the night sky, its crimson light washing across the formal gardens below and setting the fountains ablaze with bloody fire. Running again, the deep voice sent a shiver down her spine. Emma turned slowly to find Dominic standing behind her not 5 paces away. How he'd followed so quickly, so silently, she couldn't fathom. Up close, his presence was overwhelming, not just his physical size, though he towered over her, but the sheer force of his energy. Power radiated from him like heat from a flame, masculine and undiluted. "I'm not running," she managed, though the rapid flutter of her pulse betrayed her. His head tilted slightly, a predator's assessment. "Your heart says otherwise." He took a deliberate step closer, his movements fluid and controlled, just as it did in the forest. "What do you want from me?" Emma asked, backing up until the stone balustrade pressed against her spine, cold through the thin fabric of her borrowed dress. "The truth? I don't know what that means." "Don't you—" Dominic's voice dropped lower, a rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. His golden eyes narrowed slightly as they assessed her. The pendant you wear beneath your dress, the blood in your veins, the mark beginning to form on your wrist. You're her daughter, the last Moonborn. Emma's breath caught. How do you know these things? Because I've been searching for you, he said simply, the words carrying the weight of years of purpose. For longer than you've been alive. Before she could process his words, the pendant at her throat pulsed with sudden searing heat. Emma gasped, clutching at it through the fabric of her dress. At the same moment, her wrist flared with white-hot sensation that shot up her arm, making her cry out. Dominic moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in less than a heartbeat. His arms encircled her before her knees could buckle strong and secure. His touch sent electricity cascading through her body, not painful but intensely powerful, as if completing some ancient circuit between them. The burning in her wrist subsided, replaced by warmth that spread up her arm and into her chest. Let me see, he commanded, his voice gentle despite the unmistakable authority it carried. Emma could no more resist than she could stop the moon's passage across the sky. She watched mesmerized as he took her hand in his much larger one, turning her wrist upward with surprising tenderness. There beneath her skin, silvery lines had begun to appear, faint but unmistakable, forming an intricate pattern that mirrored the symbol on her hidden pendant, the mark of Lunaris. Dominic breathed reverence, softening his severe features. I knew it. What's happening to me? Emma whispered, unable to tear her eyes from the glimmering pattern. His golden gaze lifted to her face, searching. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. A sharp gasp interrupted the moment. Emma looked up to see Vanessa standing in the terrace doorway, her face a mask of shock and fury backlit by the pavilion's glow. You! Vanessa hissed, disbelief warring with rage as her eyes darted between Emma and Dominic's joined hands. The king chose to leave Mother's introduction. For you. Dominic's posture changed instantly, shifting to place himself slightly in front of Emma, a protective stance as old as the species itself. Lady Vanessa, he acknowledged, his voice cool and controlled. This is a private conversation. Vanessa ignored him, stalking forward like a wounded predator, her silver gown catching the moonlight with every step. Her gaze fixed on Emma with the intensity of genuine hatred. How dare you steal a gown and pretend to be a guest? You're nothing but a servant. A murderer's orphan we took in from charity. Emma flinched at the familiar accusations, but something inside her, something new and fierce that seemed to pulse in time with the mark on her wrist, refused to cower. I have as much right to be here as anyone, Vanessa. Rights. Vanessa laughed, the sound brittle and cold as ice breaking. You have no rights, no status, no pack. You're an Omega servant who should be grateful for the scraps from our table. That's enough. Dominic's voice cut through the night, soft but threaded with unmistakable dominance. The Alpha command in it made Vanessa physically step back, though fury still blazed in her eyes. Mother will hear about this. She spat, then turned and disappeared back into the pavilion, her silver gown flashing like a blade in the moonlight. Emma's stomach sank to her feet. Catherine would know within minutes. Whatever strange protection she'd found in Dominic's presence, it wouldn't shield her from her stepmother's wrath once the ball ended. She'll tell Catherine, Emma said, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. I have to leave. Dominic's expression hardened, something ancient and dangerous flickering behind his golden eyes. Catherine Reed has no power over you tonight, not with me here. You don't understand. She's been waiting for an excuse. She and her associates, they've been watching me for years. They're afraid of something about me, about what they call the Moonborn bloodline. A dangerous gleam entered his gaze. I'm well aware of Catherine Reed's associations, the so-called council that hunted your mother's bloodline to near extinction. His hand closed gently around her marked wrist, his thumb brushing over the silvery pattern. But they will not touch you, not while I draw breath. The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have frightened her. This was a man in Alpha she'd met mere hours ago, yet something deeper than reason responded to his declaration, as if her soul recognized the truth in his words. Dance with me, Dominic said suddenly, the command softened by the unexpected request. What? Come back inside and dance with me. His gaze was intent, serious. Let them all see. Let Catherine Reed and her council see exactly who stands beside you now. Emma shook her head, anxiety rising in her throat. I can't. I don't belong in there. I'm not like them. No, he agreed, his voice softening as his eyes traced her face with surprising gentleness. You're more, much more. He held out his hand, palm up, a king waiting rather than demanding. Trust me, Emma Shaw, just for one dance. Perhaps it was madness. Perhaps it was destiny. But Emma placed her hand in his, feeling the immense strength carefully controlled beneath his touch, the heat of his skin searing her palm. Together, they walked back toward the pavilion, the blood moon casting their joined shadows across the stone terrace, two silhouettes that seemed to belong together. As they entered, a collective hush fell over the gathering. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them, the Alpha King and the servant girl hand in hand. Emma spotted Catherine across the room, her face a frozen mask of disbelief and rapidly calculating fury. Beside her, Vanessa vibrated with humiliation, her cheeks flushed with mortification. Dominic led Emma directly to the center of the dance floor, his presence creating a circle of empty space around them. The orchestra, momentarily stunned into silence, resumed playing at a subtle nod from one of Dominic's men. A waltz, slow and elegant, filled the space. "They're all staring," Emma whispered, as Dominic's hands settled at her waist, warm and steadying through the thin fabric of her dress, his other hand still holding hers. "Let them," he replied simply, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "It's time they knew." "Knew what?" Instead of answering, he guided her into the first steps of the dance. Emma had never been formally trained. Servants didn't attend balls except to serve at them, but her body seemed to know instinctively how to follow his lead. They moved together with surprising grace, as if they'd danced this way 1,000 times before, in 1,000 different lives. As they turned, Emma caught glimpses of the watching crowd. Some faces showed open shock, others calculation, still others a dawning wonder, as if witnessing something from ancient legend come to life. The elderly man who'd warned her earlier watched with a small, satisfied smile, as if seeing a prophecy fulfilled. "Who are you really?" Emma asked, finding courage in the strange intimacy of their dance. "Why have you been searching for me? What does this mark mean?" "This mark?" Dominic studied her face as if weighing how much to reveal. "The mark of Lunaris appears only on those of the true Moonborn bloodline descendants of the first Luna Queen. For centuries, your ancestors ruled alongside the Alpha Kings, bringing balance and peace to all packs. Then why was my mother hiding? Why has Catherine been keeping me as a servant?" His jaw tightened, a muscle working beneath the skin. Because 300 years ago, a coalition of power-hungry alphas rebelled against this balance. They couldn't stand being answerable to anyone, even a Luna Queen. They hunted the Moonborn bloodline nearly to extinction, drove the survivors into hiding, and rewrote our history to erase their crimes. Emma struggled to absorb this revelation as they continued to move across the floor, every eye in the pavilion following them. "And my mother?" Eleanor Shaw was believed to be the last adult Moonborn. She hid her abilities well, but rumors persisted. When she became pregnant with you, she knew you would both become targets. "So she trusted Catherine," Emma whispered, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. "Who betrayed her to this council?" Dominic nodded grimly. "The council has operated in shadows for generations, ensuring no Moonborn ever reclaimed their rightful place. When signs indicated a true heir might emerge during this blood moon cycle, they grew desperate." "How do you know all this?" His golden eyes met hers, ancient knowledge reflected in their depths. "Because the true Alpha Kings never forgot. The knowledge was passed down through my bloodline, father to son, along with a vow to find the last Moonborn and restore the balance that was broken." The music swelled around them, but Emma barely heard it now. Her world had narrowed to this man, these revelations, the impossible destiny unfolding before her. "There's more," Dominic continued, voice lowered so only she could hear. "The first Luna Queen and Alpha King were true mates, souls created as perfect counterparts, bound by forces beyond mere biology or politics. That bond has echoed through bloodlines ever since, though few have been strong enough to bear it. Understanding dawned like the rising moon. That's why you recognize me. Why I feel—" She couldn't finish the thought, couldn't articulate the strange pull she felt toward him, the sense of recognition that defied all logic. "Yes." The single word contained volumes. His hand tightened slightly at her waist, drawing her a fraction closer. "From the moment I caught your scent in the forest, I knew. Every instinct, every fiber of my being recognized you, Emma Shaw. Just as yours recognized me, though you didn't understand it yet." The music ended, but they remained in place, caught in a moment outside time. Around them, the crowd stirred, whispers growing louder, more insistent. Catherine had disappeared from her previous position, a fact that sent a chill of foreboding down Emma's spine. Before she could voice her concern, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Two of Dominic's security detail approached swiftly, their expressions grave. "Your Majesty," one murmured, leaning close, "we have a situation." Dominic's expression hardened, but he kept his hand firmly at Emma's waist, his touch protective. Explain. Council members have been identified among the guests. They're mobilizing. Emma felt Dominic's body tense beside her, subtle but unmistakable. His gaze swept the room, assessing threats with practiced efficiency. Where's Catherine Reed? Gone, sir. Left through the service entrance with 3 unknown men. Emma's heart sank. She's preparing something. She wouldn't just leave. Dominic nodded, decision made. Jackson secured the perimeter. No one enters or leaves without direct authorization. He turned to Emma, his expression grave but reassuring. Stay by my side. Whatever happens next, do not leave my sight. The command in his voice brooked no argument, and truthfully, Emma had no desire to be anywhere else. The pavilion suddenly felt like a beautiful trap, the glittering guests potential enemies. They moved toward the dais, Dominic's security forming a loose perimeter around them. The orchestra had stopped playing. Conversations died as they passed, replaced by tense silence and wary eyes following their progress. When they reached the raised platform, Dominic turned to address the crowd. Honored guests, his voice carried effortlessly across the space, a lifetime of command evident in every syllable. I must ask for your patience. A security matter requires my attention. Before he could continue, the pavilion doors burst open with a crash that echoed like thunder. Catherine strode in her composure, now replaced by cold fury. She was flanked by 4 men Emma had never seen before. Their postures aggressive, their eyes hard with purpose. Alpha power radiated from them, less refined than Dominic's, but still formidable. Indeed, a security matter. Catherine's voice rang out, slicing through the hushed room. One concerning an imposter and thief in our midst. Dominic's hand found Emma's, squeezing gently in reassurance. Careful, Catherine, he warned, voice deceptively soft. You tread dangerous ground. Catherine's perfect poise never faltered. I apologize, Your Majesty, for the disruption. But this girl, she pointed directly at Emma, her finger steady as a blade, has deceived you. She is a servant in my household, nothing more. A disturbed young woman who steals clothing and pretends to be something she is not. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Emma felt dozens of gazes shift to her, assessing, judging. The thin veneer of acceptance granted by Dominic's attention threatened to crack under the weight of Catherine's accusations. Is that all? Dominic asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. Catherine blinked, clearly thrown by his lack of outrage. She infiltrated your royal presence under false pretenses. No, Dominic's voice hardened to steel. She attended a ball to which all werewolves of this territory were invited, as is her right. She has no rights, Catherine snapped, composure finally slipping. She is an orphaned Omega with no pack, no standing. She is the daughter of Eleanor Shaw, Dominic interrupted, his voice carrying to every corner. Last of the Moonborn bloodline, rightful heir to the Luna throne. A collective gasp swept through the pavilion, the sound like wind through dry leaves. One of the men beside Catherine stepped forward, his face tight with barely controlled rage. Dangerous accusations, Your Majesty. The man said, his tone suggesting he considered Dominic his equal despite the difference in rank. Based on what evidence? Richard Vernon. Dominic acknowledged, his voice dropping to a dangerous baritone that made several nearby alphas instinctively back away. Council member and hunter of innocent women and children. How convenient that you show yourself now. The man Richard blanched slightly but held his ground. I serve the greater good of all packs. If you've been deceived by some Omega's tricks, enough. The single word from Dominic's lips carried such authority that the entire pavilion went silent. The mark of Lunaris has appeared. The blood moon has awakened her birthright. Challenge this truth again, and you challenge the Alpha King himself. His golden eyes narrowed, a predator sizing up prey. Choose your next words carefully, Vernon. They may be your last. Richard's nostrils flared with suppressed fury, but even he recognized the line he dared not cross. These are serious matters requiring verification. Catherine moved swiftly to salvage the situation, her voice honey over poison. Your Majesty, surely the girl has you under some influence. Perhaps a rogue Omega pheromone. Enough! Dominic's command voice cracked like thunder, making every wolf present flinch instinctively. The alpha power behind it vibrated through the air, making crystal ring and spines straighten involuntarily. Emma Shaw stands under my protection. Any who challenge her, challenge me. The 4 men flanking Catherine exchanged glances, clearly reassessing their position. Alpha Kings were not to be crossed lightly, even by council members. Emma felt a sudden burning sensation on her wrist, stronger than before, almost unbearable. She gasped, clutching it with her free hand. Before Dominic could react, Catherine's voice cut through the pavilion again. Vanessa now? Everything happened with dizzying speed. Vanessa appeared from the crowd, lunging toward Emma with unexpected grace and purpose. In her hand gleamed something metallic, a ceremonial dagger taken from the display of ancestral weapons. Emma stumbled backward, but Vanessa was faster than she'd anticipated, driven by jealousy and rage that had festered for years. Dominic moved to intercept, but one of Catherine's men blocked his path. In the split second of confusion, Vanessa reached Emma. "You stole everything!" Vanessa hissed close enough that only Emma could hear. "Now you'll have nothing." Instead of striking with the dagger, as Emma expected, Vanessa grabbed her dress and yanked with brutal force. The borrowed gown, hastily assembled from leftover fabrics, tore along its weakest seams. Material ripped away, leaving Emma standing in tatters, or her pendant exposed on its silver chain. Gasps and shocked laughter erupted from the crowd. Emma stood frozen in humiliation, clutching the remnants of her dress to her body. Vanessa stepped back, triumph blazing in her eyes. "Look at her," Vanessa announced to the room voice carrying over the murmurs. "The servant girl who pretends to be worthy of an Alpha King. The daughter of a woman who died running from her own crimes." Cruel laughter rippled through portions of the crowd. Others looked away in discomfort or pity. Emma felt herself shrinking, the old shame rising like a tide to drown her newfound confidence. "She's nothing," Vanessa continued, voice carrying. "A pretender, a thief of clothing, and now of attention." "Enough!" Dominic roared, shoving past the man who had delayed him. The force of his anger hit the room like a physical wave, silencing every voice instantly. But before he could reach Emma, something extraordinary happened. The pendant at Emma's throat blazed with silver light, brilliant as captured starlight. The radiance illuminated her from within, transforming humiliation to power in a heartbeat. At the same moment, the mark on her wrist flared to life, no longer a faint tracing beneath the skin, but a fully formed symbol that gleamed like moonfire. The light spread, racing up her arm in intricate patterns, ancient runes awakening after centuries of slumber. The elderly man who had warned Emma earlier stepped forward from the crowd. His voice, though aged, carried clearly through the stunned silence. "The sigil of Lunaris," he announced, dropping to one knee before Emma. "I have not seen it since the fall of the first Luna's temple. It cannot be forged. It cannot be faked. Only her blood can bear it." One by one, other elders emerged from the crowd, each kneeling as they recognized the ancient symbol. The light from Emma's skin cast silver reflections across their bowed heads, turning their gray hair to quicksilver. "The moon has chosen," the first elder continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "The true line of Luna has returned." Catherine's face had drained of all color, leaving her pale as bone. The council members looked stricken, their carefully constructed world crumbling before their eyes. Vanessa stood forgotten, the dagger hanging limply from her hand, her moment of triumph transformed into catastrophic defeat. Dominic reached Emma at last. Without hesitation, he removed his formal jacket and draped it gently around her shoulders, covering her torn dress with the dignity of his protection. The scent of hemp pine smoke and that indefinable essence of alpha enveloped her, calming the trembling she hadn't realized had begun. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly, his rage contained but still burning in his golden eyes. Emma shook her head beyond words. The light emanating from her skin began to fade, though the mark on her wrist remained clear and defined. Dominic turned to face the room, one arm still protectively around Emma. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of centuries, the authority of all Alpha Kings before him. "Behold," he said, the simple word reverberating with power. "The blood moon has revealed what was hidden. The Moonborn line lives, the balance will be restored." He looked directly at Catherine and the council members, his expression hardening. "Those who conspired against this moment will answer for their crimes. Those who participated in the hunting of the Moonborn bloodline will face justice." Catherine found her voice at last, desperation making it shrill. "You can't prove anything. She's deceived you all with some trick." Silence. Dominic didn't raise his voice, but the alpha command in it struck Catherine, physically cutting off her words as effectively as a hand across her throat. "Your guilt is written in your own fear, Catherine Reed, and I suspect in the records of your correspondence with the council." He nodded to his security team. "Detain Catherine Reed and her council associates, search the main house for documents, and find Marcus the groundskeeper. He will have witnessed much over the years." As Catherine and the stunned council members were led away, Vanessa remained standing alone, forgotten in the chaos. Her perfect composure had shattered completely, tears streaming down her face smearing expensive makeup. For the first time, Emma saw past the cruelty to the desperate girl beneath a daughter raised to believe her only value lay in becoming someone's Luna, now watching that future disintegrate before her eyes. "What about her?" Emma asked softly, nodding toward Vanessa. Dominic's expression was uncompromising. "She attempted to harm you. That alone deserves punishment. She's as much Catherine's victim as I am in her way," Emma said, surprising herself with the insight. "Raised to hate me to compete for status and attention." Dominic studied her face, something like wonder softening his gaze. "Compassion even now. Perhaps that's why the moon chose your bloodline to balance alpha power." He signaled to one of his men who approached Vanessa. "Escort Miss Reed to her quarters. She is confined there until further notice." As Vanessa was led away, the reality of everything that had happened began to sink in. Emma stood in the center of a room full of werewolves who had just witnessed her transformation from servant to, what Luna Queen heir, to an ancient bloodline, the mate of an Alpha King. Each possibility seemed more impossible than the last. "What happens now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Dominic's hand found her strong fingers interlacing with her own. The touch sent warmth cascading through her body, settling the trembling she hadn't even realized had begun. "Now," he said gently, "we talk with the elders. There is much you need to learn about your heritage, about the power awakening within you." And after that, his golden eyes held hers, ancient knowledge and new emotions swirling in their depths. Something tender and fierce passed between them, a promise, a recognition, a claiming. "After that, Emma Shaw, we begin to rebuild what was broken centuries ago. Together." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Together. It should have terrified her, this swift, overwhelming connection to a man she'd just met. Yet it felt like remembering rather than discovering, like returning to something known rather than venturing into the unknown. As Dominic led her toward the council of kneeling elders, the blood moon reached its zenith above the glass ceiling of the pavilion. Its crimson light bathed everything in shades of destiny, a promise written in the stars centuries before either of them drew breath. Emma thought of her mother of quiet lessons beneath the moon, of whispered warnings and protective love. She thought of 8 years spent in Catherine's shadow, convinced of her own worthlessness. And she thought of the temple ruins where a black wolf had knelt before her golden eyes, recognizing what she herself had not yet understood. The mark on her wrist pulsed once gently, as if in confirmation. Whatever path lay ahead, whatever challenges, whatever discoveries, she would face them standing tall. No longer the girl who hid in shadows, but someone worth seeing, worth following, worth claiming. The true Luna awakened at last. Dawn broke over Catherine Reed's estate, painting the eastern sky in watercolor shades of amber and gold. The blood moon had set hours ago, but its influence lingered in the charged atmosphere, in the hushed whispers, passing from lip to ear, throughout the territory, in the silver mark that now adorned Emma Shaw's wrist, like ancient royalty reclaiming its throne. The grand parlor of the main house had been transformed overnight. Ornate furniture that had witnessed decades of Catherine's social machinations now stood pushed against walls, making room for a circular arrangement of chairs where 7 elders sat in ceremonial robes. Their weathered faces caught the early sunlight streaming through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor where Catherine Reed had once walked unchallenged. At the head of this circle, Dominic Blackwood stood like a sentinel, powerful even in stillness. His broad shoulders and commanding presence drew the eye naturally, the epitome of alpha authority. Yet for all his power, his gaze remained fixed not on the elders, but on Emma, who stood beside him, still wearing his jacket over her torn gown. The intimate gesture of protection had not gone unnoticed by anyone present. "The circle is complete," announced Elder Harrison, the silver-haired man who had first recognized Emma's mark at the ball. "Let us begin." One by one, the elders placed their right hands over their hearts, then extended them toward Emma's palms, up an ancient gesture of fealty that felt foreign, yet strangely familiar to her, as though her body remembered what her mind did not. "Daughter of Eleanor, last of the Moonborn line," Elder Harrison intoned formally, "the time has come for you to know your history, your power, and your purpose." From within the folds of his robe, he withdrew an object wrapped in aged silk the color of moonlight. Carefully unfolding the fabric, he revealed a book bound in pale leather that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Its cover bore the same symbol that marked Emma's wrist, the crescent moon cradling the stylized eye of ancient knowledge. "The Lunaris Codex," he explained, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he placed it on a small table before Emma. hidden and protected for 3 centuries past from keeper to keeper through blood and sacrifice. The true history of your bloodline. Emma stared at the book, feeling its importance like a physical weight pressing against her chest. My mother never mentioned this. Eleanor Shaw knew the danger of knowledge in a child's mind. A female elder explained gently, her voice carrying the wisdom of many decades. Some secrets can only be kept if they are never spoken, even to those we love most. Even to me, Dominic asked, his deep voice carrying a note of challenge. My bloodline has sought the last Moonborn for generations. We preserve the memory when others would have erased it. Elder Harrison inclined his head respectfully. The Alpha King's line kept the flame alive, yes. But we, the keepers, protected the bloodline itself. Different duties, same purpose. Without both, this moment could never have come. Open the book, child, urged another elder, his eyes milky with age but still sharp with intelligence. It belongs to you now. It has always belonged to you. With hands that only slightly trembled, Emma reached for the ancient tome. The moment her fingers touched the worn leather cover bum, the mark on her wrist flared with silver light, responding like metal to magnet. The book answered in kind pulsing with a faint luminescence along its edges. When she opened to the first page, the symbols inscribed there shifted before her eyes, rearranging from an unfamiliar script into words she could understand. It recognizes you, Elder Harrison whispered, awe softening his weathered face, as it has recognized no one since your mother. Emma began to read aloud, her voice growing stronger with each word. In the beginning, before the packs were divided, before Alpha and Omega, there was balance. The moon chose 2 guardians for her children, the Alpha whose strength would protect, and the Luna whose wisdom would guide. Neither complete without the other, neither ruling above the other. 2 halves of the sacred whole. As she read, images formed in her mind, vivid as memories, though they showed events centuries past. The first Alpha King, wild and powerful, his golden eyes fierce with protective fury, standing beside the first Luna Queen, her silver gaze shining with compassionate wisdom. Their joined hands forging peace among warring packs. Their combined power healing rifts that threatened to tear the werewolf world apart. For 10 generations, the balance held, Emma continued reading. The Alpha Kings ruled with strength tempered by the Luna Queen's compassion. But pride grew among certain alphas who chafed at any power equal to their own. The images in her mind darkened, showing conspiracy, betrayal, bloodshed. Emma's voice faltered as she witnessed the systematic hunting of Moonborn women and children, the destruction of the great Lunaris temple, the rewriting of history to erase what had been stolen. The rebellion was led by 7 alphas who formed what they called the Council of 7. She read, her voice catching. They declared the Moonborn bloodline a threat to Alpha authority. Those they could not kill, they drove into hiding. Those they could not find, they erased from memory. Emma looked up, meeting Dominic's golden gaze. Your ancestors fought against this. He nodded solemnly. And died for it, many of them. The histories taught to young alphas today speak only of a civil war among packs, with the victorious side establishing the Council for Peace and Governance. The true cause was buried. Not entirely buried, Elder Harrison interjected. The keepers preserved the truth, as did the Royal Blackwood line. We waited for the prophecy's fulfillment that when the blood moon returned in the 300th year, the last Moonborn would rise to restore the balance. That's why Catherine and the council were so afraid. Emma realized the pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. This is the 300th year. Yes, the female elder confirmed, her expression grim. They've been hunting for any trace of Moonborn descendants with increasing desperation. When rumors surfaced about your mother, they found her. Emma finished, the painful truth settling like stone in her stomach. And when she died, they kept me close, ignorant of my heritage, until they could determine if I carried the bloodline. A cruel calculation, Elder Harrison agreed grimly. Had you shown no signs by your 20th year, which approaches in months, they likely would have considered you no threat. And if I had shown signs earlier, Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. The elder's silence confirmed her fears. Catherine had never intended for her to live to adulthood. Only the absence of obvious Moonborn traits had extended her life this long. Dominic, who had been listening intently, placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. The warmth of his touch sent a current of strength flowing through her, anchoring her against the tide of revelations threatening to overwhelm her. The council members who conspired with Catherine Reed are being held in the East Wing, he informed the elders, his voice calm but undercut with steel. Tonight, when the second blood moon rises, they will face justice before the assembled packs. And Catherine? Emma asked quietly. A muscle tightened along Dominic's jaw. She refuses to speak except to demand legal representation. Her involvement in your mother's death remains unconfirmed. The pain of that open question must have shown on Emma's face, for Elder Harrison leaned forward, his aged eyes kind but serious. There are ways to know the truth, Emma Shaw. The blood memory, a power only the Moonborn possess. With proper guidance, you could see the past as it truly happened. How? Emma asked, suddenly desperate to know her mother's final moments, to understand exactly what role Catherine had played. The second temple, the female elder replied. Smaller than the great Lunaris temple, but built upon the same ley lines of power. If we journey there while the blood moon still holds influence, you could access memories stored in blood and stone. I know this temple, Emma said, recognition dawning. The ruins in the forest where my mother took me as a child. Elder Harrison nodded. Eleanor knew its significance. She was preparing you in ways you couldn't understand then. Dominic's hand tightened slightly on Emma's shoulder. The journey isn't without risk. The council has allies beyond those we've captured. Word of your emergence is spreading rapidly throughout the territory. I need to know the truth, Emma said firmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. About my mother, about what really happened that night. Their eyes met gold to sea green, and something passed between them, an understanding deeper than words, older than time. After a moment, Dominic nodded. We leave at noon, he decided. Small group, heavily guarded. The blood moon rises again tonight. We should reach the temple with time to prepare. As the elders rose to make arrangements, Emma remained seated, the Lunaris Codex open in her lap. Her fingers traced the ancient words describing powers she supposedly possessed, but had never accessed healing truth. Sensing the ability to calm raging wolves, to see through deception, to draw strength directly from moonlight. Overwhelming, isn't it? She looked up to find Dominic watching her, his expression softer than she'd seen it before. The other elders had left, leaving them alone in the morning-lit parlor. Sunlight caught in his dark hair, highlighting strands of bronze, and for a moment he looked less like the fearsome Alpha King and more like a man powerful, yes, but human in his concerns. That's an understatement, she admitted with a small, shaky laugh. Yesterday I was scrubbing floors. Today I'm apparently the prophesied savior of werewolf society. The corner of his mouth lifted in a hint of a smile. You were never meant for floors, Emma Shaw. So everyone keeps telling me. She closed the book carefully. But being told what I am doesn't make me feel any more prepared to be it. Dominic moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the radiating warmth of his body, the subtle power that seemed to surround him like an aura. Despite his imposing presence, Emma felt no fear, only a curious sense of completion, as if a piece long missing had clicked into place. The Moonborn abilities are innate, he said quietly. They've always been inside you, dormant, but present. Why do you think Catherine worked so hard to keep you subservient? Why crush the confidence of a mere servant girl, unless she feared what that confidence might awaken? Emma considered this, recalling years of subtle and not-so-subtle reminders of her supposed worthlessness, the constant reinforcement that she should be grateful for mere survival. There were moments, she admitted slowly, times when I could sense lies, when animals seemed drawn to me. When injuries healed faster than they should, I thought I was imagining things. You weren't. Dominic's golden eyes studied her intently. Just as you aren't imagining what exists between us. Heat rushed to Emma's cheeks. I hardly know you. Don't you? His voice deepened slightly, the sound vibrating through her bones. From the moment our eyes met in the garden, you felt it too. Recognition. Connection. As if your soul remembered mine across centuries of separation. She couldn't deny it. The pull toward him defied logic, transcended their brief acquaintance. Since that first encounter, being near him felt simultaneously thrilling and comforting, like finding something precious she hadn't known was lost. The true mate bond, she murmured, recalling what he'd told her during their dance. Is it real, or just another legend? It's real. His certainty left no room for doubt. Rare but real. The first Luna Queen and Alpha King shared it, a connection beyond politics or convenience. A joining of equals, each complementing the other's nature. And you believe that's what's happening between us. Dominic reached for her hand, turning it gently to reveal the silver mark on her wrist. When his fingers traced the pattern, electricity sparked between them, making Emma gasp softly. The sensation was not unpleasant, quite the opposite. I've searched for you my entire life, Emma Shaw, he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her body. Before I knew your face or name, before I understood why the moon pulled me toward this territory, I knew someone was missing, the other half of what I'm meant to be. The intensity of his gaze should have frightened her. Instead, it awakened something deep and primal within her chest, a certainty that matched his own, a recognition of what they could become together. Before she could respond, the parlor door opened. Jackson Dominic's head of security entered with quick, purposeful strides. "Your Majesty," he said, voice clipped with urgency, "we have a situation." Dominic's expression immediately shifted, the momentary openness replaced by sharp focus. "Explain." "Council loyalists are mobilizing. Our scouts report at least 40 wolves approaching from the north, led by William Blake." Emma recognized the name from snippets of conversation she'd overheard over the years. William Blake Alpha of the Northern Ridge Pack and Catherine's occasional visitor. A council sympathizer, evidently. "Timeline," Dominic asked, already standing, his body language shifting from man to warrior in an instant. 3 hours, possibly less," Jackson replied. "They're moving fast." Dominic turned to Emma, decision made. "We leave now. The temple will be more defensible than this estate, and we need to complete the blood memory ritual before they can interfere." Everything moved with military precision after that. Within 20 minutes, Emma found herself changed into practical clothing provided by one of Dominic's female guards, sturdy pants, boots, and a fitted jacket that allowed freedom of movement. The Lunaris Codex was carefully packed in a weatherproof satchel she now wore across her body. In the estate's courtyard, a convoy of black SUVs, weighted engines running a display of modern efficiency, melded with ancient purpose. Elder Harrison and 2 other elders would accompany them. The remaining 4 would stay behind to coordinate with other allied packs. Marcus, Emma's longtime friend from the household staff, insisted on joining as well, his knowledge of the forest paths potentially valuable. As Emma approached the lead vehicle, a familiar voice called her name. She turned to find Vanessa standing on the main house steps, flanked by 2 of Dominic's guards. Her normally perfect appearance was disheveled, eyes red-rimmed from crying, but her posture remained proud even in defeat. "May I speak with her?" Vanessa asked the guards, who looked to Dominic for approval. After a moment's consideration, he nodded, though his watchful gaze never left Vanessa as she descended the steps toward Emma. When they stood face to face, Vanessa seemed at a loss for words. The hatred that had burned so brightly the previous night had dimmed, replaced by something more complex. Resentment mixed with confused respect, perhaps even a grudging acceptance of changed realities. "You're really leaving," she finally said. "Yes," Emma replied simply. Vanessa swallowed hard. "They're saying you're the true Luna, that all this time you were—" She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. "I didn't know either," Emma offered quietly. "Would it have mattered if you had—" A bitter smile touched Vanessa's lips. "Mother raised me to believe I was destined for greatness, that one day I would stand beside an Alpha as his Luna. All those lessons, all that preparation, and you who had none of it are the one chosen by the moon itself." The raw hurt in her voice stirred unexpected compassion in Emma's chest. "Your mother used us both, Vanessa. Me as a servant, you as a pawn in her ambitions." Vanessa flinched at the truth of it. After a moment, she reached into her pocket and withdrew something small that gleamed in the sunlight, Emma's pendant, the silver chain broken where Vanessa had ripped it from her neck during the ball. "I took this when I tore your dress," she admitted, holding it out. "I wanted to hurt you, to take something that mattered." Emma accepted the pendant, feeling its familiar weight in her palm. "Thank you for returning it." "It wouldn't have worked anyway," Vanessa said with a hollow laugh. "They're saying these things only respond to Moonborn blood, another lock I could never open." Before Emma could respond, Dominic's voice called from the convoy. "Emma, we need to move." With a final glance at the girl who had tormented her for years, the girl who now seemed smaller, somehow diminished by the collapse of her mother's machinations, Emma turned away. Whatever justice awaited Catherine Vanessa was as much victim as perpetrator. The journey to the temple ruins took nearly 2 hours, the convoy forced to abandon vehicles halfway when the forest paths became too narrow. They continued on foot, Dominic and his guards forming a protective perimeter around Emma and the elders. Though she had traveled this route countless times as a child, the forest felt different today, more alive, more aware. The trees seemed to whisper as they passed, branches swaying despite the still air. "The forest recognizes Moonborn blood," Elder Harrison explained, noticing her wonder. "The land itself responds to your presence. These ancient woods remember what men have forgotten." As they hiked the final incline toward the temple clearing, Emma felt a growing warmth from the mark on her wrist. The closer they came to the ancient stones, the more it pulsed with silver light, as if awakening fully after its long dormancy. The temple ruins stood as Emma remembered a broken circle of weathered stones surrounding a crumbling altar. But now, seeing through new eyes, she recognized symbols carved into each stone identical to those in the Lunary's codex. This wasn't just any sacred place. It was a site built specifically for Moonborn rituals, a place where the veil between worlds grew thin. "We have perhaps 2 hours before the blood moon rises," Elder Harrison announced, checking the position of the sun now lowering toward the western horizon. "And less than that before our pursuers arrive. We must prepare quickly." While Dominic positioned his guards at strategic points around the clearing, the elders guided Emma through the basics of the ritual. The blood memory required 3 elements: the light of the blood moon, the power of the Lunara stones, and a physical connection to the past, something that had witnessed the events she sought to uncover. "The altar stone itself will serve," the female elder explained. "It has stood here for centuries, absorbing the emotions and memories of all who came before." "Including my mother," Emma whispered, running her fingers over the worn surface where strange symbols had been carved by hands long turned to dust. "Yes, this is where she came for sanctuary, where she performed the protection ritual over you as a child." Elder Harrison placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and quite possibly where she spent her final moments. The sun slipped lower. Long shadows stretched across the clearing as the elders arranged ceremonial items around the altar. Silver bowls filled with clear water that caught the fading sunlight, bundles of dried herbs that released ancient scents when crushed, small stones inscribed with symbols that matched Emma's mark. She watched, trying to absorb everything to prepare herself for whatever visions awaited. Dominic approached, his expression grave. "My scouts report Blake's group has reached the forest edge. They're moving faster than anticipated." "How many?" Elder Harrison asked. "Closer to 50 now. He's gathered reinforcements." Dominic's jaw tightened. "We have 15 trained guards, plus ourselves." "Uneven odds," the elder observed calmly. "I've faced worse." Dominic's confidence wasn't bravado. It was the simple certainty of a warrior who knew his capabilities. Still, his gaze softened when it turned to Emma. "But I would prefer you complete the ritual and be safely away before they arrive." "I won't run," Emma said firmly. "Whatever answers I find here, I'm done running." Something like pride flickered in his golden eyes. Before he could respond, a guard approached with urgent news. The first scouts from Blake's group had been spotted less than a mile away. "They're trying to surround the temple clearing," the guard reported, moving in teams of 3. Dominic issued rapid orders, dispatching guards to intercept the advanced scouts. "Delay them as long as possible without engagement. We need time." As the guard hurried away, the sky began to darken, not with approaching night, but with an unnatural speed that suggested something else entirely. The remaining sunlight took on a reddish hue, filtering through trees and crimson shafts that pierced the clearing like bloody spears. "The blood moon rises early," Elder Harrison said, wonder and concern mingling in his voice. "It senses your presence, child. It hastens to meet you." Emma felt it, the strange pull from above, the answering resonance from her marked wrist. The silver pattern there glowed brighter as the daylight dimmed, illuminating her skin from within with a light older than civilization. "We must begin now," the female elder urged. "The window of opportunity will be brief." As the elders led Emma to the altar stone, Dominic took up position at the temple entrance, his powerful frame silhouetted against the darkening forest. His guards formed concentric circles of protection around the clearing, weapons ready but hidden from view. Emma knelt before the ancient altar, placing both hands upon its weathered surface. The stone felt warm beneath her touch, alive with memories accumulated over centuries. "Open yourself to what the stone has witnessed," Elder Harrison instructed, his voice low and rhythmic. "Feel your blood call to blood memory. See what has been hidden." Emma closed her eyes, focusing on the pulsing warmth in her wrist, letting it flow outward through her palms into the stone. At first, nothing happened, just darkness and the sound of her own quickened heartbeat. Then gradually, images began to form behind her eyelids, disjointed at first, fragments of many memories from many times. People in ancient clothing performing rituals around the altar. A circle of women with silver-marked wrists, hands joined, voices raised in haunting song. A young girl herself sitting cross-legged while her mother traced symbols on the stone with clear water. "Focus on your mother," Elder Harrison's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Find her final memory." Emma concentrated, sifting through the stone's accumulated history, searching for Eleanor Shaw's presence. The images blurred, shifted, then suddenly sharpened with painful clarity. Her mother kneeling at this very altar, Emma asleep in a small hollow beneath a nearby tree, carefully hidden beneath branches and leaves. Eleanor's face tear-streaked, but determined as she worked rapidly, drawing complex symbols on the stone with her own blood. A protection ritual. Emma recognized it now from descriptions in the Lunaris Codex. The most powerful magic a Moonborn could perform, binding their life force to shield another. The vision shifted, footsteps approaching through the forest. Eleanor rising, placing herself between the sound and the hidden child. Catherine Reed emerged from the trees, but not alone. 3 men flanked her, their postures aggressive, their eyes cold with purpose. "It's over, Eleanor," Catherine's voice echoed through the memory. "The council knows about your daughter. They know she carries the bloodline." "Leave us alone," Eleanor replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "We've done nothing to threaten you or anyone else." "Your existence threatens everything," one of the men snapped. "The prophecy is clear. The last Moonborn will rise to overthrow Alpha rule. We cannot allow that." "Ancient superstition," Eleanor countered. "My daughter is a child, not a weapon." "She will grow," Catherine said coldly, "and the blood will tell. You know this, Eleanor. You've always known this day would come." Emma watched, heartbreaking, as her mother stood firm despite being outnumbered. "I trusted you once, Catherine. Believed we were friends." "We were," Catherine admitted, something like regret flickering across her face. "But the council offered me protection status, things I couldn't refuse. In exchange for betraying me," Eleanor's voice hardened, "for hunting my child. It didn't have to be this way." Catherine's gaze shifted to the men beside her. "If you'd just taken the suppressants I offered, hidden your abilities completely, and denied my daughter her birthright," Eleanor shook her head. "I will not let you or the council determine her fate." One of the men stepped forward, impatience evident in his movements. "Enough talking. The girl must be found." "Where is she, Moonborn?" Eleanor's chin lifted. "Somewhere you will never reach her." What happened next unfolded with terrible swiftness. The man lunged toward Eleanor, but she was ready. With movements faster than human, she evaded his grasp, her eyes flashing silver in the darkness. The second man circled behind, trying to flank her. The third withdrew a weapon, a syringe filled with pale liquid. Catherine stood apart, watching with cold calculation as Eleanor fought with desperate grace. For a moment it seemed she might outmaneuver them until her foot slipped on the uneven ground near the ravine edge. The momentary imbalance was all they needed. The first man seized her arm. The third plunged the syringe into her neck. Eleanor's body convulsed, her eyes wide with shock and pain. "What have you done?" Catherine demanded, sudden alarm in her voice. "That wasn't the plan. Plans change," the man replied coldly, watching as Eleanor collapsed to her knees, silver blood, Moonborn blood trickling from her nose and eyes. "The council wants no loose ends." Horror dawned on Catherine's face. "You're killing her. This wasn't what I agreed to." "Your agreement is irrelevant," the second man cut her off. "You've served your purpose, Catherine Reed. The last adult Moonborn dies tonight. The child, when found, will be raised under council supervision until we determine if she carries the gene." Emma watched, tears streaming down her face as her mother struggled against the poison flowing through her veins. Even dying, Eleanor Shaw fought not for herself but for her daughter. With the last of her strength, she dragged herself toward the altar stone. "You're too late," she gasped, pressing bloody palms against the ancient rock. "I've already protected her. The moon has hidden her. You will never, never see what's right before your eyes." With those final defiant words, Eleanor Shaw collapsed. The men dragged her body to the ravine edge and pushed it over, creating the appearance of an accidental fall. Catherine stood frozen, the full realization of her betrayal's consequences washing over her face. "Find the child," ordered the apparent leader. "Search every inch of this forest." "And if we can't find her tonight?" asked one of the others. A cold smile. "Then Catherine Reed will take her in, raise her as a servant, watch for signs of the bloodline, a living insurance policy." Catherine's face registered shock, then resignation. "You planned this all along. I never had a choice." "No," the man agreed dispassionately. "You didn't. But serve us well in this, and your daughter may yet become the Luna she dreams of being." The memory faded, dissolving into mist as Emma's consciousness returned to the present. She found herself still kneeling at the altar, stone tears streaming down her face, her body trembling with grief and rage. Elder Harrison's weathered hand rested gently on her shoulder. "You saw," he stated softly, not a question, but a recognition. "Everything," Emma whispered. The council killed her. Catherine, she swallowed hard. Catherine betrayed her but didn't intend her death. She was manipulated, then forced to take me in. A convenient arrangement for the council, the female elder observed grimly, keeping you under the watch of someone who already feared your bloodline. Emma rose shakily to her feet. The blood moon now hung fully visible above the temple clearing, bathing everything in its crimson light. Her marked wrist blazed in response, silver light pulsing in counterpoint to the moon's red glow. My mother died protecting me, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. She used her last strength to cast a concealment spell. That's why my abilities remained dormant, why the mark didn't appear until now. Dominic approached, having witnessed her emergence from the vision. Without hesitation, he drew Emma into his arms, offering silent strength as she processed the painful truth. She allowed herself to lean against him, briefly drawing comfort from his solid presence, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. Catherine must face justice, she said, finally pulling back to meet his gaze. But not for murder. She didn't kill my mother, though her betrayal led to it. Before Dominic could respond, shouts erupted from the forest edge. The perimeter guards fell back toward the temple, clearing weapons now drawn. Through gaps in the ancient stones, Emma saw movement among the trees, Manan, dozens of shapes converging on their position. Blake's forces are here, Dominic announced grimly, stepping away from Emma to address his guards. Defensive formation. Protect the Moonborn and the elders at all costs. As his men moved into position, a voice called from the forest edge, confident, arrogant, coldly amused. Dominic Blackwood. This doesn't need to end in bloodshed. A tall figure emerged from the trees, flanked by two heavily muscled wolves in human form. William Blake stood easily over 6 feet, his silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, his face handsome in a harsh, predatory way. Alpha power radiated from him, less refined than Dominic's, but still formidable like raw iron beside forged steel. Blake. Dominic acknowledged him with a curt nod, his posture relaxed yet ready. You bring armed wolves to a sacred site. Explain yourself. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. The council sent me to retrieve what's theirs. Hand over the Shaw girl and you can leave unharmed. She belongs to no one. Dominic replied, his voice dangerously soft. Least of all the council that murdered her mother. Ancient history. Blake dismissed with a wave of his hand. The important thing is the present. And presently, you're outnumbered. He gestured to the trees where more of his wolves had appeared, surrounding the clearing completely. Numbers mean little to quality, Dominic observed calmly. Blake laughed, the sound sharp and unpleasant. Always the arrogant royal. This isn't about your fighting prowess, Blackwood. It's simple math. You have, 15 trained guards. I have 50 wolves ready to die for the cause. What cause would that be? Emma asked, stepping forward to stand beside Dominic, ignoring his subtle gesture to stay back. Maintaining the council's lies. Keeping Werewolf Society in balance for your own gain. Blake's gaze slid to her, assessing and dismissive. So this is the supposed Moonborn heir. Doesn't look like much, does she? His attention returned to Dominic. Has she bewitched you already? Mighty Alpha King turned your head with Omega tricks. A low growl rumbled in Dominic's chest, but Emma placed a restraining hand on his arm. The touch seemed to calm him, though the tension never left his powerful frame. I've seen the truth, William Blake, she said, her voice carrying across the clearing with unexpected authority. In blood memory, the council murdered my mother. They've hunted my bloodline for generations, and now they've sent you to finish what they started. Clever girl, Blake smirked, but it changes nothing. You're coming with us one way or another. I think not. Elder Harrison stepped forward, his aged frame somehow imposing in the blood moon's light. The prophecy has already begun to fulfill itself. The Moonborn Queen stands beneath the blood moon in her rightful place. Would you defy fate itself, William Blake? Something like uncertainty flickered across Blake's face, quickly masked by bravado. I defy superstition and Omega propaganda. There will be no queen but those chosen by Alphas. As he spoke, Emma felt a strange calm settling over her. The fear and grief that had gripped her moments ago receded, replaced by a clarity she'd never experienced before. The mark on her wrist pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, sending waves of silver light cascading up her arm. Without conscious decision, she stepped forward, moving past Dominic's protective stance to stand directly before the temple altar. The blood moon's crimson light bathed her, fully meeting the silver glow of her Moonborn mark. Where the two lights touched, power resonated like struck crystal. I am Emma Shaw, she declared, her voice strong and clear. Daughter of Eleanor Shaw, last of the Moonborn bloodline, I stand where my ancestors stood beneath the moon that chose us. The silver light spread, flowing from her marked wrist across her entire body until she appeared illuminated from within. The ancient stones of the temple responded, glowing with matching silver light along their carved symbols. Blake and his wolves fell back a step, instinctive wariness overriding their aggression. Even Dominic watched in amazement as Emma's transformation continued, her power unfurling like a banner in the night. For 3 centuries, the council has ruled through deception and fear. She continued, each word carrying power that seemed to vibrate through the clearing. They murdered my ancestors. They unbalanced our society. They denied werewolves the harmony that comes from true balance between alpha strength and Luna wisdom. The ground beneath her feet began to glow, ancient ley lines awakening after centuries of dormancy. Around the clearing, Blake's wolves shifted nervously, some backing further away, others dropping involuntarily to one knee as if in the presence of royalty. No more, Emma declared. The balance will be restored. The truth will be known. The Moonborn line has returned. Blake, fighting against the instinct to submit that seemed to be affecting his followers, snarled in defiance. Pretty light, showgirl, but it changes nothing. You have no real power here. In response, Emma lifted her marked hand toward him. The silver light concentrated, forming a tangible beam that struck the ground at Blake's feet. The earth itself responded, roots erupting from below to wrap around his legs, holding him immobile. I have exactly the power I need, William Blake, she said calmly. Not to dominate, not to control, but to reveal truth and restore balance. With a gesture, she expanded the silver light to encompass the entire clearing. Where it touched Blake's wolves, it seemed to penetrate their very beings. One by one, they dropped their weapons, their aggressive postures melting away, replaced by expressions of confusion, then dawning clarity. What are you doing to them? Blake demanded, struggling against his root restraints. Removing the council's influence, Emma replied. Breaking the compulsions they placed on your wolves through generations of manipulation. It was true, Blake's followers were straightening, looking around as if seeing clearly for the first time. The blind loyalty that had driven them to attack was dissolving under Emma's silver light, allowing their true selves to emerge. They've lied to us, one wolf said, wonder and horror mixing in his voice. All this time, the Moonborn weren't a threat, another realized aloud. They were our balance, our completion. Blake watched in disbelief as his army disintegrated before his eyes, decades of careful indoctrination undone in moments. This is some kind of trick, he insisted desperately. Some Omega mind control. It's truth, William Blake, Dominic said, moving to stand beside Emma. The one thing the council has feared for centuries. Their power exists only in darkness and deception. In the light of truth, they have nothing. Emma felt the power flowing through her begin to ebb, the immense energy of the transformation, taking its toll on her still untrained abilities. She swayed slightly, and immediately Dominic's arm wrapped around her waist, supporting her without diminishing her authority before the watching wolves. The council will face justice for their crimes, Emma announced to the assembled werewolves. Those who willingly participated in murder and oppression will answer for their actions. Those who were deceived will have the opportunity to help build a new balanced society. Her gaze fell on Blake, still bound by living roots. Which will you choose, William Blake, continued loyalty to lies, or the chance to serve truth? The fight seemed to drain from him all at once. Not submission exactly, but resignation in the face of overwhelming evidence. Release me, he requested, pride still evident in his rigid posture. I will not oppose you further today. With a gentle motion, Emma released the roots binding him. Blake straightened his clothing with as much dignity as he could muster. The council will not surrender easily, he warned. They have resources, allies in every territory. This is just the beginning. We know, Dominic acknowledged, but beginnings are powerful things. As Blake and his now pacified forces withdrew from the clearing, Emma felt the last of her strength ebbing. The silver light receded, the mark on her wrist returning to its normal appearance, visible but no longer radiating power. Dominic caught her as her knees buckled. Easy, he murmured, concern evident in his golden eyes. You've expended enormous energy for someone newly awakened to their abilities. Emma managed a tired smile. Did I do that, all of it? It felt like something was working through me. The moon, maybe. The moon chose well, Elder Harrison said, approaching with evident awe in his weathered face. In all our histories, no Moonborn has manifested such power on their first full awakening. Dominic lifted Emma effortlessly in his arms. She needs rest. The second blood moon still has hours before it sets. We should return to safer ground. The journey back took them to a secluded clearing where Dominic had instructed his men to set up camp. As twilight settled over the forest, he carried Emma to a private tent furnished with soft furs and glowing lanterns. With a gentleness that belied his strength, he laid her down, his golden gaze never leaving hers. "You need rest," he said, his voice deep and tender. Yet there was something else there, a primal hunger barely restrained. Emma reached for his hand, drawing him closer. The silver mark on her wrist pulsed in harmony with her racing heart. "The mate bond," she whispered. "It's incomplete." Dominic's eyes darkened molten gold in the lantern light. "I won't claim you in weakness, Emma Shaw. Your choice must be made in full strength with clear mind." She smiled, finding unexpected courage. "My mind has never been clearer. My mother fought to give me the freedom to choose my destiny." Her fingers traced the strong line of his jaw. "And I choose you. I choose us." A low growl rumbled in his chest, sending shivers of anticipation through her body. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her neck. "Once done, this cannot be undone. You will be mine as I will be yours, forever." "Mine," she echoed, tasting the word, claiming her power in it. When his lips finally met hers, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. The silver mark on her wrist blazed with light, matching the golden glow that seemed to emanate from beneath Dominic's skin. Their energies intertwined, silver and gold moon, and sun wisdom and strength. With reverent slowness, he lowered his mouth to the junction of her neck and shoulder. "My queen," he whispered against her skin. Then his teeth found her flesh, pressing just enough to mark without breaking. The mate bond surged between them, a current of ancient power binding their souls. Emma gasped at the sensation, not pain but completion. Something broken, finally mended. Something lost, finally found. In response, guided by instinct older than civilization, she reached for him, her hands finding the same spot on his powerful neck. As her own mark was placed, the bond sealed itself, two halves becoming whole. A pulse of energy rippled outward from their joined bodies, washing through the forest. Nearby, the guards and elders looked up in awe as silver and golden light momentarily illuminated the trees. Miles away, wolves of all ranks lifted their heads, sensing the shift in the very fabric of their world. Balance after 300 years was being restored. In the quiet aftermath, as Emma lay in Dominic's protective embrace, she felt the new connection between them, a living bridge of sensation and awareness. His thoughts weren't words in her mind, but impressions, emotions, a constant reassurance of his presence. "What happens now?" she asked softly. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her arm, each touch igniting small sparks of pleasure. "Now we rebuild. The council will be dismantled. Truth will replace lies. And you," he pressed a kiss to her forehead, "will take your rightful place beside me. Not behind, beside." Emma smiled, feeling strength returning to her limbs, renewed by the completed bond. "As equals." "As it was always meant to be," he agreed. The night deepened around their tent, the second blood moon casting its crimson light through the canvas. Tomorrow would bring challenges, resistance from those who feared change. But tonight, in this moment, there was only the two of them, Alpha and Luna, strength and wisdom perfectly balanced at last. As dawn approached, Emma stood with Dominic at the edge of their camp, watching the eastern sky lighten. His arm around her waist, her head against his shoulder, they faced the new day together. The silver mark on her wrist glimmered in the growing light, no longer a mystery, but a promise. "My mother would be proud," she said softly. Dominic pressed a kiss to her temple. "She gave everything to bring us to this moment, to give you the chance to choose your own destiny." Emma nodded, her heart full. "And I chose balance. I chose us." The rising sun cast long shadows behind them as they turned back toward camp. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever enemies remained, they would face them as the first Alpha King and Luna Queen had done centuries before, two halves of a greater whole, neither complete without the other. Balance, after all, required two equal halves of the sacred whole.